adorned by the celestial non-existent flower. Behold, here goes the non-existent son of a mother who cannot give birth. It's not a motherless son, it's a sonless mother, so to speak. Carrying, he's adorned by a flower which has fallen from the celestial realms, and he's carrying a bow, intricately carved bow made of the horns of the rabbits. So that was that. I knew one piece was missing, so that was the one. So this is the, this is to talk about, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, what is talked about is the non-existence. Yeah, maybe you can open that window, a lot of bodies in the room. Little, maybe some air will come. Ah, wonderful. So that was the missing piece. Now I got it. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Malati is here. Very nice. Not seen you in a long time. Welcome. Malati, everybody knows. She had come to Eugene. Yeah. Very nice. Nice to see all of you. So, Vairagya Pithika Bandham Prathamam Shrinu Sanmate Nane Mire Vayatrasti Sthitishchakrasya Kidrishi. We have seen the various levels on which this verse operates. First, on the very literal level we take, and we have taken that, meaning this is the foundation, this is the Vairagya, and without Vairagya as the foundation, how can you have a pursuit of Jignasa or a pursuit of Brahman? A committed pursuit of Brahman is not possible without Vairagya. But then there are hidden undertones that makes this verse a very, very beautifully embellished, because it operates on so many levels. It operates on so many levels because the sadhanas, even though Vairagya is highlighted, it is not highlighted at the cost of Shravanam. That's why it comes right in the beginning. Shrinu, So for the Shrinu, you have to have Vairagya. For Shravanam, Vairagya is necessary. And who is the person doing the Shrinu? Who is the person listening? Sanmatihi, the one with Viveka. Because even to listen to the importance of Vairagya, something must be here in the top story, correct? You cannot have a to let sign, meaning it's empty, vacant, for rent, for hire. You cannot have a sign like that, Something must be here, some kind of spark plugs that engage in this discussion and immediately grasp for, grasp the need for, the urgent need for Vairagya and see the connection to this pursuit. All this is there, you see, on another level. And so all this for what? To discover this Asti, the Asti which is the basis of the whole universe. So Sanmati discovers Sat as himself, herself. So discover this Asti, and when for this Asti you need another Asti, Vairagyam Asti. Because without that Asti, this Astitva, which is really Asmitvam, which is the isness, which is really the amness of myself, is not understood. You see, the two are connected together. So there is a play on Vairagya nasti, this also becomes nasti. So I deny myself without this vairagya. Very beautiful. So on many, many levels, it functions very deep. The more you read, the more things you can take out. Then I also gave the poetic level. The road is dharma and the chariot is the body, mind, sense complex. This is derived from the Kathopanishad. And the Rathaswami, the buddhi, the ahankara, is the passenger sitting in the chariot. The buddhi who is being addressed, Sanmatihi, has to guide the chariot on the road of dharma in order to qualify for moksha. And you cannot go on the road of dharma without vairagya, because the road of dharma causes one to drop all kinds of likes and dislikes. Because it's not easy to adhere to dharma, because what I want to do is in askance with what I have to do. There is a big gap, and so even on the poetic level, it's just very fitting, beautiful opening of this particular section. Fantastic. Then, next one. Na shudre veda samskara. Sorry, I've omitted the visarga. Na shudre veda samskaraha. Tailancha sikata suna. Tailancha sikata suna. Nasyat karatale roma. Tatha muktirna ragini. Na shudre veda samskaraha. Tailancha sikata suna. Nasyat karatale roma. Nasyat karatale roma. Tatha muktirna ragini. Yeah. So, there Shudra here means the one who was outside of the fold of the Vedas. In the ancient times, there was this Varna system where a class of people were seen for service, and they were actually not outside the fold of the Vedas, but it was made so because the religion became extremely patriarchal and very narrow, because in the Brahma Sutra there is a very interesting discussion. Brahma Sutras are very ancient. Apashudra Prakaranam is there. So even though the Shudras are what can be considered the class of service people who serve all the other people, they were not denied this knowledge. This Apashudra Prakaranam is there in the Brahma Sutra, where the question is raised, are these people allowed to pursue Brahma Vidya? Brahma Vidya is what? Veda only. Vedanta is part of Veda. And the answer is yes. As long as you are a human being, as long as you have qualifications, yes. After a lot of dialogue, the answer is yes. So, really speaking, the injunctions all about this came later on, very unfortunate, because the Varna system disintegrated into something. It was made so that everybody could follow their potential without needing to look for a job. It was based on creating what was a very non-competitive society, but alas, it did not work out in that way. Every system gets corrupted, and so this too got corrupted. And the fact that he is referring to this shows the constrictions of the time that he lived in. Na shudre, this verse actually, the purport of this verse is that there are certain things that are not found with certain things. Certain things are absent in certain things, no matter how hard you try. So if you take a person from the Shudra Varna and then you ask them to recite the Vedic mantras, they will not know. Veda samskara means the Vedic rituals and mantras, and if you give them something and ask them to do a yajna and ask them to recite the mantras, they will not know. Why? Because they were not taught. Simple. They were not taught, so they will not know. So, I mean, in contemporary times, you can say somebody who has not gone to school cannot write a book in the same way. So, in the Shudra, there are no Vedic mantras. Why? Because that person was not exposed to the Vedas. And then what else? Na sikatasu tailam. Sikata means sand grains. And if you look at the sand grains, they are similar looking to the sesame seeds. What is the difference? You squeeze the sesame seed and then gingili oil comes out. Sesame oil comes out from sesame seeds, and then you squeeze the grains of sand. What comes out? Sweat and tears. That's all. That's what comes out. And your hand is also bruised because the sand is very, grainy, and it's just, it hurts the hand. Nothing else comes out. Sweat, blood and tears. That's all will come out from squeezing the sand. Correct? So the impossibility is being shown. So in the 18th century, if you ask the Shudra, person who belongs to this Shudra Varna to recite a Sukta or to recite the Vedic mantras, that cannot happen. Why? Because they were never exposed to the Vedic mantras. Thanks to all the discriminations and everything that they and the exploitation they underwent as a result of a very rigidified aspect of the tradition. Then no matter how hard, and if you get the very wonderful press, it's called the sand press, and if you press the sand, you will just get sandpaper. That's all. You will not get oil. Impossible. Correct? And then what? What's the third one? What's the third one?
No hair on the palm of the hand.
Karatale, romaha nasti. Supposing somebody says, I'm losing all my hair, I need some magic potion that will grow the hair everywhere, including the palm of the hand. Maybe for bears there is hair on the palm of the hand, but certainly not for the human beings. So even if you do some hair transplants, if you put ointment and Ayurvedic preparations to grow a few hairs on the palm of the hand, it is impossible. Correct? So we have 3 examples of impossibility. One is a historic example that was true in the time that he wrote, that the person belonging to the Shudra Varna is unable to chant the Vedic mantras because they don't have the samskara. Samskara means that habit and the exposure to the mantras are not there. How will they chant? And just like an unlettered person cannot write a book because ABC also is not there. And then what? You can't press the sand, and if you just say, I pressed it a little harder, I'll get oil. Not possible. And likewise, even the best, hair growing remedies will fail to grow the hair on the palm of the hand. So what's the point? Why are you telling me all this? Na muktihi ragini. Ragin means the one who is in raga. That's why ragin. So na muktihi. There is no mukti. There is no freedom, no moksha possible. But you just said moksha is my swarupa. Yes, it's your swarupa. But do you know it or not? What is the answer? No, I don't know it. So if you don't know it, you have to know it. Yeah, I can know it. You can't know it when you are having so many ragas. And raga includes dveshas. Dveshin, ragin, dveshini, dveshini, ragini. Both of them. So in the person who is complete, replete with ragas of all kinds, I want this, I want that, and this, here, there, the mind is so distracted, and the heart is given away to all kinds of pursuits. So when it comes to Vedanta, one is heartless. There's no place. There is no place for Guru, there is no place for Shastra, there is no place for Shiksha to undergo this training, there is no place for Shravanam, there is nothing. So just as futile as it is to squeeze oil out of sand, similarly as futile it is for a person who is without vairagya to come and sit in the class and think that moksha will come out, So if you squeeze the person who has no vairagya, there is no connection to this. The connection between the pursuit and vairagya is so total that no vairagya is equal to no moksha. But it is very interestingly put if you look closely at the verse. He doesn't say, because the other thing is what, he said that karatale romaha nasti, correct? Yeah. So the nasti is constantly on the things that are not there. So the hair does not grow on the palm of the hand, no matter how many things you do to the palm of the hand, correct? So hair is not there on the palm of the hand. The oil is not there in the sand, no matter how much you squeeze it. And the Vedic mantras are not there on the lips of the person belonging to the Shudra Varna, because they have not been lettered in the Vedas, they have not been educated in that. So the impossibility or the non-existence is highlighted here, correct? So the non-existence of certain things in certain times and places are highlighted as examples to exemplify what? The non-existence of moksha in the person with raga. Very interesting. So, all these non-existences of the hair on the palm of the hand, going backwards, on the oil in the sand, and of the mantras in the Shudras, non-existent. Similarly, non-existent is the possibility of moksha, and he doesn't give a double negative. For the person without vairagya, he doesn't say. For the person with raga. Very interesting. This is a very beautiful way of teaching. This is Pujya Swamiji's way of teaching. Very interesting. Because here, the student is not being talked at. Look at the tone here. It's beautiful. You must have vairagya, you must have viveka, you must have mumukshutvam, you must have shama, you must have dhamma, otherwise you are useless. What is instead told is, as long as the person has raga, there is no moksha. In fact, vairagya is not mentioned at all. Thereby completely sidelining the person's authority issues and fear of things being told and fear of being manipulated in the teaching situation and all these things. Because there could be some teachers who say, you need vairagya. Okay, Guru, what should I do? Give me all your money. Then I will give you vairagya. Correct? So these fears are there even in the teaching situation. Maybe I'll be taken advantage of in the name of vairagya, what all I have to give up and then what all I have to do. So all these latent fears are there and they are stoked by these kinds of statements. You have to have vairagya, you have to have viveka. This is part of the routinization. The mind is expecting that and is already pushing that back. So much so that you say vairagya, the person leaves the class and runs. Gains vairagya from the class. Yeah, your lecture was effective because the person got vairagya from the class itself. Correct? So this is one way the psychological mindset of the person operates, of the listener. Another way, there are certain other kinds of listeners who, when coming into the spiritual situation, they don't do anything for themselves. Guru, their phone call. Can I go to the bathroom? Tell me quickly because I have to quickly go. So, Guru, can I eat my lunch? Guru, can I eat dinner? Guru, should I go to work or not because I don't feel like? So there are certain other people whose psychological makeup is just they don't understand the concept of surrender. Surrender is of the resistance, they don't understand. So what do? They surrender all buddhi, all decision making process. Yeah. And then they keep asking, what should I do? How should I do this? Please tell me what to do. Make it easy for me. This is what the whole thing is. And then they fight with the guru also. Why did I come to you? What kind of guru are you? You're not telling me which color to paint my nails. You're not telling me what to do. You have to, guru means, this is the kind of a general collective ignorance that says guru means it is somebody who has no other work but to keep telling people what to do. Poor guru. What is the condition? You can imagine. So, what should I do? And for such people also, this is a very beautiful way of expressing it. You come to the conclusion, because such persons, when they are told, please have vairagya, they'll be very obedient and they'll trot off promptly and, to go get vairagya. However, by whatever means necessary, because they are very dedicated to the guru. Whether they are dedicated to the knowledge or not, we don't know, but they are certainly dedicated to the guru, this class of disciples, and then they will go and try to get vairagya, not because they see the connection, but because the guru told them. You see the difference? Because the guru said I have to do, but so basically they are borrowing the guru's buddhi and the guru's connection without really understanding it. Guru said, so I have to have viveka. Guru said, go get vairagya, so I am getting vairagya. So there are generally two psychological makeups that constitute this whole thing. The one saying, let me out. I don't want you to tell me anything. If you tell me, I'm going to run away. Authority issues. The other one is authority issues of other kind. Please tell me what to do. The other one says, let me in. Please tell me what to do. And both of these mindsets are habituated mindsets that present a big block to the study of Vedanta. Therefore what? Therefore you have to do the middle road. And how to tell the student do the middle road without telling without actually coming across as telling the students. So that's why Pujya Swamiji always says that the study of Vedanta is very objective, because if it is given properly, this teaching is given with zero manipulation. Yes, the desire is there on part of the teacher. May everyone be happy, may everyone be free, but it is a Shubha Ichha, it is Shubhecha. It is an auspicious desire that has the power of intention, but that's where it stops. It does not translate into manipulating the students to get Viveka Vairagya. One is left on their own pace, on their own sweet pace, even if that pace, takes several lifetimes. It is okay. You don't manipulate the students. This is one of the best, this is really the way to teach Vedanta. And similarly, he doesn't say, without vairagya you are fried, your brain is fried, your pursuit is fried, you are toast. No. What does he say? Simply makes the connection. Just like you cannot eke out oil from the sand, just like you cannot grow the hairs on the palm of the hand. See, this is also poetry. Yeah, hand, sand. Yeah. So, similarly, without, for the person, there is no, just like there is no oil and no hair, similarly, there is no moksha for the person with raga. Then you see, it is incumbent, it shows that it's not the Guru's job to give vairagya. That is a dysfunctional codependent relationship. The Guru does not participate in that kind of a codependency. In fact, we get serious training not to do that, and how not to do that. By watching our own teachers. We see that. And it's just like a functional mother. The mother doesn't keep carrying the child around after it can walk, correct? And even if the child says, up, I want to be carried, the mother will distract the child, let's walk till there. Why? Because you know how to walk. Oh, but I fall down and I'm afraid. The child may say that, if it can talk, or it will express that somehow. That's okay. You fall, you get up, you learn how to balance. And this is the only time the mother, compassionate as she is, she does not heed the tears and the cries of the child. She will make it walk, and she will say, okay, here is an incentive, come into my arms. So the child, half crying, half running, half falling, will come and, the child who is 1 year old learning to walk. Similarly, this inner child who is full of, ragadveshas is guided by the teacher, and the hand is held only so far, only this much, only this, this time period. The hand is held until the person is on their own. This is what the whole thing is. Because the person has the capacity, the person has the ability. And if the teacher does all that work, then what happens is that you're not really facilitating the growth of the student. What you're doing is instead, making them continue in their habitual patterns of this codependency. They continue to feel helpless. That's why I always say, when the student is ready, the teacher disappears. As you, in you. So, that is Vedanta. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. The one who we worship differently and variously, as Bhagavan, as Jagat, as Jiva, as we see them differently, Guru, Shishya and Bhagavan. But the one whose form is actually formlessness. Like even space goes, is all pervasive, is everywhere and is everything. And to that Dakshinamurti, my namaskara. This is what the whole thing is, very beautiful. And so here, the pedagogy is very faithfully represented. Very beautifully and faithfully represented pedagogy, where the student is not talked at, because the student is respected. Already the student was addressed as Sanmatihi. Hey Sanmate. The student is very nicely respected. And the audience you have to respect. You don't talk at the audience. You talk to the audience. And then in this process, what is happening? In this process, the person is being strengthened to see internally strengthened, to see the connections between, the presence and the absence of certain things. Just like there is no oil in the sand, no matter how hard you squeeze. There is no hair on the hand, no matter how hard you try. There is no moksha. Absence of moksha. When there is, for the person full of ragas. It's very interesting. Moksha means your own presence, your own glory. But it is taught through the absence. Because the absence of my own glory is what I know, what I feel, what I can understand. This is the second level of meaning here. Because moksha to me is absent. Because I'm just entering the landscape where this moksha is taught. I'm just entering this whole teaching situation. So where is moksha? Moksha, are you here? I am going. So moksha is absent, like the oil, like the hair. But what is moksha when you unpack? It is very much present. Present in who? The one who is lamenting its absence. So the presence of moksha is actually absent because of want of recognition. That want of recognition is eclipsed by other wants called ragas. Is overshadowed by the force of all these wants, because this original want, this yearning, I do not desire, I do not take it seriously. Therefore this want morphs into all these wants and attaches, to the finite. All the wants pursue the finite, and the infinite being myself is not recognized. So the moksha is very much like the absent oil. Why? Because the sand, correct? So there is no oil in the sand. And like the sand, what? Is this person full of ragadveshas? Grainy, gritty, edgy. And without sara, nissara. So without moksha, without the recognition of moksha, the life is nissara. Ayam samsaraha ativa nissaraha. Ah. So without moksha, I have this void and emptiness. So it's a very funny emptiness because it is there but it is not understood. Unlike the examples given, where it is not there. Here it is there, but it may as well be not there because for want of understanding. And also, on a deeper level, the wrong striving is given. So like the foolish person that we are able to laugh at, why are we able to laugh at this person who goes on squeezing the sand, to get some oil? Because sadhana sadhya asambandha, the non-connection between what is to be gained and what the person should be doing in order to gain that. The means and the ends do not match. For the person relentlessly striving to gain the oil from the sand. And another silly person trying to gain what? The hair on the hand. It is futile because it is not possible. The two have nothing to do with one another. And equally futile is the attempt for the person with a lot of ragas. Ragini. So it's not the person with ragas, it's the person who is the embodiment of ragas. That is what Ragini means. Yeah. So Ragini is not just the possessor of ragas, is the one who is possessed by ragas. Very interesting matup here. See, this matup is the in. Matup becomes in when it is, akara is there. So, ragaha, ragin, it's an alternative form of the one who possesses. The one who possesses is the suffix, and that which is the object of possessing is the substantive. Ragin, the one who possesses raga. Dveshin, the one who possesses dvesha. What other examples are there? Vedantin, the one who possesses Vedanta. So this ini, Ataha inithanau, that is the sutra. So when the akara is there as the last vowel, then you can use the in. You can use the suffix in to show possession. But here if I possess, I am the possessor of the upanetram. What is upanetram? Yeah. I am the possessor of upanetram, correct? So I can drop it. Right? Ragin, I am the possessor of the ragas. Drop it. Oh, well, that's hard. That means what? You are not the possessor, you are possessed. Yeah. Raga becomes the possessor. You are not the possessor. You are a little sidekick here that has been possessed by the ragas, and therefore there is no mukti for you. This is what is being told. Very beautiful. It's just every single thing when you keep looking from the standpoint of Vedanta. If you have the drishti given by Pujya Swamiji, you can see all these things. This is what the whole thing is. This is what teaching is. This is what is involved in the teaching. And of course, with a text like this, which lends itself to looking at all these things, it becomes easier. Very nice. So other things were, we are talking of possession, but here this particular word ragini is used. Doesn't mean female. Ragini, short e, seventh case. Na muktihi ragini. In the one who is possessed by raga. So in other words, for the first verse has talked about Vairagya as the foremost pursuit before even the pursuit of Vedanta. And the first verse has established the centrality of Vairagya, dispassion, objectivity, cultivating objectivity, to be able to see that without this the road is useless, dharma is useless, and the pursuit is useless, it cannot go forward, and moksha therefore doesn't become a possibility. And the second verse highlights the fact that in the person, not in whom Vairagya is absent, in whom ragas are present. Because we deal with what is present. Because to understand that asti, this asti has to be reckoned with. There cannot be two astis. Very beautiful on the final level, of the most subtle level. Bear with me, it's just awesome. There is only one asti, right? How many sats? One. Yeah, you cannot even say sats. Only one sat. Correct? So what is the problem to understand this sat? You are this sat. Where is the problem? Because I have carved out a niche for myself with the help of a separate existence. I am as good as this body, mind, sense complex. I am as good as what I possess. I am as good by that which possesses me. I am as good as this house. I am as good as this job. I am as good as this marriage. I am as good as this family. This is how one has separated oneself from that sat, which includes the marriage, the family, but is much more than that. So therefore I lead an existence of a disconnected existence, because of which I am not able to see the harmony which is this Jagat, which includes me. I am not able to see Ishvara in everything. I am not able to see Bhagavan and Bhagavati in everything, in anything, because I am always lamenting what I am not. You see that? Do you see that this is how the whole thing operates? So why is there this disconnection? It's not because I don't have. It's not because of my have-not status. It is because of a parallel have. Because I have created a parallel reality of my own subjectivity. This is so beautiful. I have created a parallel reality of my own subjectivity, which is stopping my cognition of that which is. It's like the Raja of Raipur. Yeah. I've told you that story. Raipur is a small kingdom in the heart of India, in central Madhya Pradesh. Raja of Raipur received good news. What is the good news? All the other kings and queens of the nearby kingdoms have decided to come under his vassalage and decide to crown him the king of the whole of India. And everybody clapped. The town crier brought the news, and the Raja was despondent. Oh, but I have to give up Raipur. What about Raipur? Is Raipur included or not? This is what the jiva feels. Ayo, Vairagya, what I have to give up? In order to get the whole, I have to give up so many things. One Swami went to his Guru. One newly minted sannyasi went to the Guru and said, for this study, for this life, I have given up wife, I have given up, possessions, I have given up house, I have given up job, I have given up bank account, most important, I have given up children, I have given up friends, I have given up addictions, I have given up, I have given up, I have given up. He was keeping on rattling all the list of things he was giving up. And the Swami, the Guru, sat quietly and then finally said, yes, beta, I understand you have given up a lot. When are you going up? When are you giving up? The giver upper. Give up the giver upper, which is stopping you from seeing that you have really not given up anything. What you have given up is the finite. Yeah, but I have given up the finite. But what you are getting is the infinite. What you've given up is nothing. But at least I gave up nothing. Yeah, this is the Jivik mentality. Jiva's mentality is to hold on to the finite and create a parallel kingdom of the Ahankara. The Ahankara becomes the Raja of its small little power principalities, of its small little areas of expression, and tyrannizes its family, tyrannizes everything in its own world, and then gets tyrannized in return, because always feels this void and this lack of what I am not. This is the problem with subjectivity. This is the problem with Ahankara that's dyed in the colors of subjectivity, because it creates a parallel reality. It is convinced that it is only this much. And whether the parallel reality includes accolades and bouquets, or whether the parallel reality is one of brickbats, I am nobody, I am nothing, even that is dangerous. Both ways. It is indeed a parallel reality. It is that inner duality which is addressed in the Upanishads. In the Kathopanishad we find two fellows are drinking. What are they drinking? Karma cocktail served by Chitragupta. Mostly bitter, little bit of sweet, bursts of sweetness comes in once in a while. Are two drinking? No, only one is drinking and crying into the drink. So bitter and salty. The tears make it salty. And similarly, then why are you saying two? Because the one who is crying sees the distance between himself and Ishvara, between herself and Ishvara, as a magnified distance when there is no distance. And in the Mundakopanishad, the same situation is talked about. Two birds, happily embracing each other on one branch. They are the greatest of friends. They have shining wings. One of them is very, very busy. Why? Eating berries, which are mostly rotten. Yeah. Rotten berries. This is why this is karma phala. Yeah. Rotten berries. What is the other one doing? The other one is just waiting? No, just watches without participating in this drama. So there are really two birds? No. One is Isha. What is the other one? Anisha. Not Ishvara. But then where is the other one? The other one is just in my imagination, in my own wrong identification. I am convinced that I am not Isha. So therefore I have christened myself Anisha, I have baptized myself. Anisha is my name. And lamentation is my claim to fame. I have baptized myself. I have tied up myself in knots because I have created a parallel reality because of my ignorance. And so therefore I have become a Ragini, Ragin, I have become Ragin. And so as long as this parallel fortress of Ragadveshas, this citadel in which I have imprisoned myself, behind which wall I am firing all these offensive and defensive mechanisms, I am deploying these defense-offense mechanisms against the universe, then what? There is no possibility of redemption for me. That is what is pointed out. The choice is yours. What kind of a choice? Optionless choice. Choiceless choice. But it is a choice you have to make. Still that choice, even though it is optionless, the Guru cannot make it. The Guru cannot say, come here beta, I'll give you Vairagya. How? Through Shakti path, No, Guru will give you the Shakti to follow your own path. That is the original Shakti path. Yeah, Guru will give you the Shakti to follow your path. Without which one is psychopath. That's all. This is sociopath. That's all it is. So therefore, this is why the construction is done in this manner. To show that what is needed is the dropping of these ragas, because the ragas are creating a parallel reality to stop me from seeing this mukti. So mukti nasti, Yad yaha vadati, yo vadati, the one who says there is no mukti is because the one has got another asti. Ragaha asti, and ragaha asti is equal to muktihi nasti. And the rest of the math can be done by you, Narahari says, not me. Narahari is saying that. Rest of the, please do the math. If ragaha asti, muktihi nasti, therefore how do you resolve this? Ragaha nasti, muktihi asti. And here he defines raga as, defines vairagya as the absence of raga. Vigataha ragaha yasmat saha viragaha tasya bhavaha vairagyam. Vigataha has departed, you can say vigataha because there are many of them. Vigataha ragaha yasmat, the ragas have departed from whom? That person is called viragah or viraga, feminine. And then when you make this viraga, this person, you have to now make this person without raga into an abstract noun. The quality of not having raga, the viraga-ness, how do you say? Vairagyam. And that vairagyam is the pratyaya is syanj. So that syanj, only the yam remains. So, and it takes adi vriddhi. So the v becomes vai and ragyam. That is the syanj pratyaya. Very beautiful. So he is also defining viraga. He is also defining what is vairagya by attaching it to seeing the presence. The one who can see mukti as a possibility is the one who has vairagya. Very beautiful. Going further, where are we? Number 3, correct? Yeah. Then, having thoroughly covered this topic, the definition of vairagya and and what happens when you don't have it, and all these things, the author proceeds to talk about the kinds of vairagyas. There are kinds? Yes. So let us see what kinds are being talked about. Vairagyam dvividham sukshmam. Vairagyam dvividham sukshmam. Tadbhedam avadharaya. Tadbhedam avadharaya. Jignasa mukhyamekam syat. Jignasa mukhyamekam syat. Jihasa mukhyameva cha. Jihasa mukhyameva cha. Vairagyam dvividham sukshmam. Vairagyam dvividham sukshmam. Tadbhedam avadharaya. Tadbhedam avadharaya. Jignasa mukhyamekam syat. Jignasa mukhyamekam syat. Jihasa mukhyameva cha. Jihasa mukhyameva cha. He says, dvividham vairagyam syat. There are twofold. Vairagya is twofold. Oh, 2 kinds? What are they? And what is the difference? Sukshmam bhedam. The difference is very, very superfine. Tad bhedam sukshmam. Vairagyam dvividham syat. Tad bhedam sukshmam iti avadharaya. This you please ascertain that the bheda, the distinction between these 2 kinds of vairagyas that are about to be written about are very, very what? Subtle. Yeah. And they are extremely subtle. Avadharaya, please know them to be subtle. Meaning don't beat yourself up if you immediately don't get the distinction. And then what are they? One is called jignasa and the other one is called jihasa. See, so subtle. Both of them start with G and both of them end in sa, and only the middle syllable is different. One is gya for jnanam and the other one is ha for giving up. Very interesting. That's how to tell the difference. So he says, there are at the outset, let me let you know, there are 2 kinds of vairagya. One, both the distinction between them is extremely subtle. Please know the distinction. So one is called, and here again he cannot resist a pun, jignasa mukhyam ekam syat. Jignasa mukhyam means, mukhya is a very interesting word. Mukhya comes from the word mukha, mouth, which is central, face, mouth, mukha. So mukhya means primary, because when you meet a person, you don't notice their hands and legs, you notice the face first, correct? You make eye contact, see the face. And so jigyasa mukhyam and then jihasa amukhyam, one meaning. Yeah, very interesting. So jigyasa, the predominant one, the one we should be concerned about, is called jigyasa vairagya, and then the other one, the non-predominant, one meaning here, mukhya, and then when you look at the last word, jihasa mukhyamevasa evacha. So the second one is called jihasa, and that long a can be said to have a hidden a, which we can break the sandhi, jihasa amukhyam evacha. So the predominant jigyasa mukhyam and jihasa amukhyam. One is the predominant form of vairagya called jigyasa, and the other one is the non-primary, the secondary kind of vairagya, the lower kind of vairagya, not the mukhya, the lower kind of vairagya called jihasa. One meaning. Second meaning is what is given in the translation. Mukhya means arising from, springing forth. So one springs forth from jigyasa, the other springs forth from jihasa. But I also like that he has inserted this little pun. Jigyasa mukhyameva syat, jihasa amukhyameva cha. He is showing the gradations. There are two kinds, and the distinction is indeed subtle because the end product is vairagya. But no, one of them is true and the other one is, secondary. There is a hierarchy. One of them is better than the other. Or you can take one of them springs forth from the source of wanting to know, jigyasa, and the other one springs forth from the desire to abandon, desire to give up, jihasa, desiderative construction in both cases. The desire to know is called jigyasa, and the desire to give up is called vairagya. That's why in this section I translated vairagya as objectivity. You see? Because that is what is the desire to know what is, how it is, exactly as it is. What am I? I am Brahman, and this is the original identity. This is exactly how it is, which has to be known. So the desire to know is called jigyasa, which is the definition of vairagya as objectivity, and the desire to give up is also called vairagya, the dispassion, giving up, and that is of a lesser kind, and that stems from the desire to give up. When does one has a desire to give up? When confronted by too many failures. That's when you give up. Nobody gives up when they are at the peak of their career and success and everything, correct? Yeah. There's always yet one more. If one is a celebrity in Hollywood, Bollywood, Collywood, Tollywood, so many woods are there, sandalwood, and then, if you are a celebrity, then there will always be one final hit song, hit film, and usually that hit is what hits them out of the Hollywood. Yeah. They make a bad decision. So one more. Yes, that one almost got the Oscar. I was nominated. But this one will give me the award. And, so this one more hit, that yearning for one more little bit of a pinnacle of fame, one more song, one more this. And usually that is the debacle. The debacle of the person is because they don't know when to stop, correct? Similarly, a gambler, of course there's addiction involved here. Even in this, the gambling is an addiction, but still even the celebrity is addicted to the fame. There also addiction is involved. Addicted to samsara, one keeps going and going in the hope that something will be achieved by me, something will be reached. And what is that something? One more thing, yet one more thing, correct? Yeah. So that shows that the person is not really ready to give up. Even somebody who has some, illness for which there is no cure, they will also keep trying everything before they give up. So nobody is ready to give up, because that feeling that one more thing I will try, that hope is always there. And so who gives up? Not the one who is successful. The one who is confronted by failure is the one who gives up. What kind of failure? Repeated failure. Keeps going, one more. But then after a whole lifetime of failure says, enough, I give up. Correct? The disappointed person gives up. And who else gives up? The hopeless person gives up. The loser gives up. The failure person confronted by failures gives up. And then if something has been taken away from someone, like they had a lot of money, some people, and then they made the mistake of putting it in stocks and bonds. I don't know who makes money out of stocks and bonds. Nobody I have met. It must be some people I have not yet met. So, and they meet somebody who says, oh, I invested this much, it was so successful, give me your money, I'll also put it. Friend says. And then they give the money, the friend is living in a mansion, and these people have to just sort of scrape whatever they have and sell everything and declare bankruptcy, move to India, and then, live there as a permanent guest in somebody's house. Yeah. A permanent guest is nothing but a pest. This is what it is. You can't be a permanent guest. So, and such a person, will just be so tired that they will have this ready to give up. Forget it. Let's go to Varanasi. Let's go to Kashi. Let's go and sit on the banks of a river. Let's go sit in an abandoned temple. Forget all this. This world has made me so sad. Talk to the hand is my attitude towards the world. I don't want to deal with this world. The gates of the world are shut for me. I'm sick of this samsara. So, and same thing, somebody suffering from if it's a terminal illness, it's okay. The jiva gets terminated, at least for this life, done. But no, it's these days the illnesses are never terminal, but then they cannot be cured also. They go on impairing, but there is no cure. So such a person whose quality of life is severely, curtailed because of the illness, also feels like giving up. And somebody who has lost all their possessions feels like giving up. And somebody who has had a lot of deaths in the family feels like giving up. All these giving ups, or if there is such a word, that is called jihasa vairagya. To abandon, to give up. Jihasa, the desire to give up. So this vairagya, which was called a subtle distinction, is nothing but the desire to give up. What about the other one? Jignasa. Jignasa has nothing to do with giving up. It's the desire to know Brahman. And that desire is so predominant that in the face of the desire, in the face of that burning desire, everything is automatically given up. You see the difference? Can you appreciate the difference? Very subtle. In the first, jihasa vairagya, I am giving up. Why? Why am I giving up? I am giving up because I am sick of being confronted with failures, losses, fears, all these things. I am giving up because I am not at peace with my surroundings and with myself. And I don't know how to go on. I give up because of hopelessness, primarily. In the latter, in the second one, I don't give up at all. I pursue Vedanta primarily and wholly, and in the process, I don't have time for anything else. This is what the whole thing is. Swamiji tells the story of his youth. Pujya Swamiji, relates this story. When he was in his 20s, he met one of his gurus, Swami Chinmayananda, and then he started to go and attend satsangs and talks whenever the teacher came to Chennai, and the teacher, being very impressed by Pujya Swamiji, gave him a lot of work to do. he started off with the ashram newsletter, and so called Tyagi at that time. And so he was doing the newsletter, and so he was in charge of the newsletter, and he was very busy attending satsangs, doing the newsletter. And then all of Swamiji's friends with whom he used to go to play, with whom he used to go to movies, and with whom he used to perhaps go out to eat, they would all come and say, what? We don't see you at all. Where are you? There is a new movie released. You must come and see. We have already purchased your ticket. And what would Swamiji say? Sorry, I cannot come. I am busy because I want to study, because I want to, understand, because I want to read the Guru's books, I want to listen to his tapes, whatever it was he wanted to do. I don't have time. And then the next time Swami Chinmayananji came to Chennai, Swamiji invited all his friends, come to the Guru's lecture. And what did they say? Sorry, we don't have time. A new concert is coming to play. This is what it is. So here, it's not the conscious giving up. It's not that the person here, in Swamiji's case, he decided, I'm never going to see a movie, I'm never going to go to the hotel, I'm never going to sit with these friends or play cards. He didn't decide that. He was, overpowered, by what? By the desire to know Brahman, so much so that all other pursuits dropped on their own because he prioritized the teaching. Do you see why this is a superior kind of vairagya? Because the force of my pursuit is not in giving up. The force of my pursuit is in pursuing what I want. In the process, all the things go to the wayside. All the things are forgotten, all the things are given up. Automatically they fall away, they drop away, Rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva na nivartate. Bhagavad Gita. So when you go on this, when you are serious about this study, all the other things drop away, the pursuits drop away, but the desire for the pursuit may still remain. You may say, I wish I could do this, I wish I had that, how come I gave up that? This whole thing, Atma Brahman, only one thing I'm doing all the time, the desire may remain, but param drishtva nivartante. Because in the light of what you are pursuing, which is yourself, which is infinite, which is whole, all the other desires, bow and back out. This is what it is. That is what it is. Let's see the verse. So these two kinds are talked about. And please ascertain the differences between the two. Jignasa mukhyam, the predominant one, the best kind is called jignasa. The other one, the not so good kind, is called jihasa. Or you can say one springs out of the desire to know, and the other one springs out of the desire to give up. Because giving up is full of strife, and giving up, you feel deprived. Here you're not depriving yourself. You're just attaching to that which is the biggest thing, so that all the other things become small. You're attaching to the pursuit of that which is the biggest thing, because everything else becomes small. All the desires become small, because you have focused on that which is whole. I don't want to stop, but we have to stop. So the next class will probably be, the next set of classes will probably be on the weekend classes I'm only talking about, will probably be on the weekend of the 18th, 19th and 20th, that is of September, Saturday and Sunday. But before that we will also have the weekly classes, and perhaps we can do this one also. But I need a few days to let you know. So I will let you know. Because I'm trying to see how I can beam the classes despite the travels and everything. So a lot of travel is coming up, and so therefore I would like to continue with the classes. So let me look at the situation and see how it can be done. And if we don't have your emails, you please write it in this chat box, or write it in the live stream chat box, or send it to us so that we can keep you informed. And then there is one person called JJ who has been attending very ardently, but I don't recognize you. Would you like to introduce yourself? Who are you? Who is JJ? And somebody else called Namaste. Yeah, so somebody else who has signed in with the word Namaste. So can you please, tell me your name? So it will be nice to meet you and greet you. Nobody is responding. Maybe everybody went to lunch. I don't know. But we'll say the closing prayer. Maybe they need some time to respond. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Are you able to hear? Everybody is able to hear? Yeah. So can Namaste and JJ please introduce yourself if you are around? Oh, Varun. Okay. Yeah, that Varun we know. They're wonderful. And JJ is still a mystery. And if not this time, I hope to meet you next time. Yeah, any questions?
When you talk about that one other aspect next time, so you talked about the Vyagra, but as far as of the six-pack, which one's the most important?
Shraddha.
Shraddha.
Okay. Shraddha, trust pending understanding. Reverence for the teacher, reverence for the Shastra, reverence for one's own pursuit, and the hope that it will be understood and the trust that it will be understood. So it's because Ishvara and oneself as Bhagavan is not a matter for belief, it's a matter for understanding. So even though I don't see it, I trust that it will be understood. So I have devotion for that which is going to release me, which includes the teacher, which includes the Shastra, which includes the pursuit. So I take the pursuit seriously and reverentially I pursue this. I take the teaching seriously, I take the teacher seriously, I take the text seriously. That is what is called Shraddha. Yeah, nice question. Any other question? Yeah, call me. Malati, you can call me. You can call me today sometime. Right now I'm not here, but later this afternoon, please phone me. Yeah, no problem. Afternoon, evening, you call. Anything else? Any other questions? Well, that's good. No problem. All right. So I will let you know, and if we don't have your email address, please give it. Kavita, you can write your email address. They can send you their email address if they want to be on the list. Okay? Yeah.